Founded by Allison. Oh, Allison, I'm going to pause this because.
There we go.
All right. Happy Monday to everyone. Thank you so much for humoring us for a second and having that awesome dance party before we press record. But my name is Bobby Mann. I am co-hosting today. I'm going to toss it over to my amazing co-host, Irene, to introduce herself. Irene, over to you.
Hi, and don't you all love it when Bobby warms up the crowd? We just never know what we're going to get. A little bit of Whitney, a little bit of Justin, we never know. But my name's Irene Chancelong, and I'm a grant specialist at Maddie's Fund.
Awesome. And I will echo what Shelly is saying in the chat. There's nothing better than the pets joining in on the party as well. So the folks that brought their pets to the dance party, special shout out to you. So typically with these calls, we have a different cadence these days where we go quickly into our national updates and save it for just one special speaker. But once in a while, we're able to get a very special guest that pops up just to give us a little bit of extra Monday motivation. So I'm going to toss it over to one of my favorite people in the whole world, Mary Smith, to get us going.
Thanks so much, Bobby. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Irene. I really just love these sessions with all of you. So I'm sure I have shared this story with you before, but I'm going to repeat it. So my husband and I were arguing. This was pretty early on in our relationship. And just as a matter of form, my husband and I were together for 42 years. So this was probably somewhere around year 5 or 6. And we were arguing, which is mostly means that I was arguing that the dishwasher needed to be, the dishes need to be put in there a certain way, or else I was arguing about the laundry had to be done a certain way. And my husband looked at me and he said, you know, there are a lot of streets named after you. And I thought to myself, Mary Lane, Mary Drive, Mary Street. How come I hadn't seen any of these signs? And I looked at him and I said, really? And he said, yeah, one way. So what my husband was trying to tell me in his inimitable style was that in trying to establish a certain order for how the laundry needed to be done or how the dishwasher needed to be, dishes had to be placed in there. Really, there was something else going on, and that something else was coming from a place of fear. And it really had nothing to do with how plates were aligned or how laundry was done, because laundry was going to get done, dishes were going to get cleaned, but something else was going on. And my need at that point to control those outcomes was really coming from someplace else. And what that said to me was that it was an important lesson for me to understand that sometimes what I think is a motive is not really a motive, but it's an outcome of something else happening. And I think in the work that we do, it's really, really easy for us to get sidetracked without even knowing it. When we think about the lives in front of us that we are responsible for, not just the 4-legged ones, but also the 2-legged ones and the people in the community whose faces and names we don't know. Those are big responsibilities. I'm not going to try to minimize that at all, but when we try to keep a singular approach to our leadership, when we try to keep a singular approach to the work we do, when we try to keep as much control as possible, really what we're doing is probably far more damaging to ourselves and to our organizations than we have ever realized. You know, that whole thought of, I remember back in the day when we would talk to people about volunteers and we would get a response of, oh, it's just so much easier if I do it myself, because then I have to explain to people and then they don't even show up and then I have to explain to somebody else. And we create this whole narrative about what we do and how we do it. And we're always the one that are centered in the middle. And I think that because of what's happening to many of us today with such intense and chronic staffing shortages, that we really can't be the one in the middle all the time. Sometimes it's nice to be on the edge. Yes, I know the edge could be a scary place. But if you're on the edge holding on to somebody else's hand and somebody else is holding on to somebody else's hand and somebody else's hand, and you've got this whole thing that's happening hand in hand in hand, it's not really as scary as you would think. So I would urge us all to start looking at maybe some of the, just dig a little deeper to figure out, why do we do the things we do in the way that we do them? And is there something else that we might be able to do instead? There's a show on TV, and I don't even know if it's on anymore, and it's called Undercover Boss. And I'll tell you what I thought was so strange about that show. And that was the disguises of the bosses were pretty lame. But even with those lame disguises, people still didn't know who the person at the head of the company was that they worked for. That was incredible to me. Yes, I understand that there, you know, if you're working for Amazon or if you're working for FedEx or something like that, there's hundreds of thousands of employees. And so the chances of them knowing everything or knowing who is at the top, that's probably more real than not. But how about in your own organizations? Whether you're the person at the top or the bottom, in the middle, it doesn't really matter. Do you know everybody in your organization? Like, I am blessed with the fact that at Maddie's Fund, we have 23 employees. And I'm telling you, we are in each other's pockets all the time. Probably too much, but we can't help it. We've all known each other for a long time because I think the shortest amount of time somebody has worked at Maddie's Fund is maybe 5 years. But outside of that, people have been there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So we get to know a lot about each other. We are supportive of each other. We know each other's pets. We know each other's spouses. We know each other's family. We know a lot of our backstories. But not only is it a time factor, but it is sort of what happens when you work for an entity that is a family entity. It becomes like a family, good, bad, or indifferent, but that is sort of the dynamic. So within your organization, if you're the person at the top and you don't know the people that are cleaning your kennels, I would urge you to spend a day working with them, doing what needs to be done, inviting them to spend a day with you, figuring out all the stuff that you are doing. When we are more transparent about what we do, how we do it, and what the outcomes are, people definitely feel like they're part of something. Now, I heard one time that when NASA was working on getting, manned flights, or whatever we call those, human flights to the moon, everybody who worked at NASA was working towards the same goal. And if you asked the person who was cleaning the offices what their job was, they would tell you that their job was to get the first man on the moon. Not that their job was to empty the garbage cans. Their job was to get the first man on the moon. And that is the kind of, I think, mission engagement that we are all looking for. And it certainly isn't a unicorn, but it does happen when we make it a priority for everyone to feel like they are a part of what we do and how we do it. And I'm sure that may seem to you as being pie in the sky, and that's not what I'm trying to say. But if there are people in your organization that don't know who you are, I would urge you to think about ways of changing that. Because if you're making decisions on their behalf, if they're making decisions on your behalf, you all should know each other. And I mean, you all should really know each other, because the times ahead of us are hard, and they're only going to get easier. Not when we come up with that one thing that's going to make it work, because I'm going to tell you that everything that we need to get through is there, but how we get through is completely different. And when we can hold each other's hands to get through it, it really makes it possible for us to be brave when we're afraid. And we're always going to be afraid, but we just don't have to let that fear motivate us or direct us in ways that aren't going to be healthy for you or for the person next to you. So, Bobby, Allison, Irene, thank you all so much for giving me this chance to do what I do, whatever that may be, share my dinosaurs with all of you. So let's go out there and not get extinct today. Watch out for those, lightning bolts. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks.
Shout out to Mary Smith, folks. Let's give her a quick round of applause, and then we're going to toss it right over to Irene to keep the show flowing.
Well, yes, I just have to follow up that all we ask for is a semi-regular dose of Mary's Mojo. That's all we ask. Leave it to her to give us motivation that was out of this world. Thank you. I do want to open up the floor for national updates. If anybody has any, please feel free to unmute and share.
Hey, I'm going to go ahead, jump right in. Tomorrow, candid conversation with Jose Ocaño. He is a senior director of people and culture, and boy, does he know how to hold hands and get people to hold hands. And so Mary is going to lead us in a nice interview with Jose. I hope you join us. I just put the link in chat. Please register, and we'll see you there tomorrow.
Thanks, Allison. There's a lot of enthusiasm for that, Maddie's candid conversation. I have an announcement on behalf of Companions and Animals for Reform and Equity. CARE will be holding their in-person conference, The Gathering, on October 6th through the 9th, and they've added a virtual component as a more equitable option to attend. So I'll drop that invitation link in the chat.
Hey everyone, this is Summer from Cuddly. I just wanted to let everyone know that we have an exciting development with our pet pantry program. We have just launched our monthly giving program called the Full Bowls Club for donors to contribute a bag of food monthly, or hopefully more than a bag of food monthly, to your pet pantry. If you are interested in that, I will drop my email in the chat, and we would love to hear from you.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle Nichols, and I am from the Animal Hospice Group, where I'm in Seattle, but our mission is worldwide, and I was invited here by Tracy Brad, who's working with us in marketing and fund development. We are really excited to be one of the leaders in animal hospice education and support. So a lot of people say, animal hospice, are you helping the animals? Well, of course, indirectly, we're helping the animals because we support the families by giving them education, the knowledge they need, the support they need, so that they can care in the best possible way for their ill, terminally diseased and dying animals. So we're very excited that we have a new shelter and sanctuary practice product. So in other words, people from sanctuaries and rescues and shelters can now come in as a group and get animal hospice education that is top-notch, and become part of our community so that they can care for animals under their care through their businesses, and of course those who are their personal own pets. So please come and check us out, and thanks. It's nice to meet all of you.
Well, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead. We'll have one more national update if that's okay.
Very quickly, this is Allie from Good Pup, and I'm just stopping by to announce the October Good Pup webinar. It's going to be October 11th. We're going to be doing something different this time. We're going to be building behavior plans for real shelter dogs on the webinar. So it's going to be very interactive and very cool. So we invite all of you, your staff, your volunteers, and fosters to join us. And I'll put a link in the chat as well as our website where you can watch previous webinars.
Awesome. Thank you, Allie. Looking forward to those webinars, and happy fall, everyone. I just wanted to throw that out there. So we do have a great speaker. It's a person that we've had come on the call before, but bringing Dr. Weese back. And Dr. Weese is a veterinary internist and a diplomat of the American College of Veterinary Internal Medicine. He's a professor at the Ontario Veterinary College, University of Guelph or Guelph. I'm sorry, you, Dr. Weese, you can correct me when you're on,
Close
but
enough, yeah.
okay, thank you. And director of the university for the Center for Public Health and Zoonoses and chief of infection control at the Ontario Veterinary College Teaching Hospital. And he also runs the infectious disease website, Worms and Germs blog. So before I kick it off, to you, Dr. Weese, I just wanted to let everyone know we are leaving some time for Q&A after his presentation. So please think of your questions, and then we'll also hopefully hear some comments from Dr. Julie Levy. Thank you so much, and tossing it over to you, Dr. Weese.
Great, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me back. Some slides here. So what I want to do here is just not really rapid fire, but go through a few different topics. They're kind of timely in the news. And like I said, if we have any questions, we'll try to leave lots of time at the end for that. So about these topics or general infectious disease things. So the first one I want to talk about is something you've probably heard of, you may know a lot about, is this outbreak of disease that was initially reported in dogs in Michigan. You know, the initial reports were lots of dogs sick, lots of dogs dying. It's not really clear what it is. It's not the regular things. So that causes a lot of fear. People in the area, but also people that are moving dogs around, dogs that are going between shelters, dogs that are going there for shows. We had a lot of concern because of the big unknown factor. And like this was a bigger example of it, but it's something that we see regularly. It's these little disease clusters that sometimes are bigger disease clusters that raise some concern and we have to sort out. So this is just kind of a general thing, but if you're ever running into a problem with a disease, whether it's in your facility, it's in a clinic, in a shelter, in a household, or in an area, we need to think about what's going on. And for me, you know, there's the standard adage, you know, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras, right? It could be a zebra running you down, but it's pretty unlikely. Normal things occur normally. Common things occur commonly, whatever you want to say. So when I start to think about these, the first thing I think about is this is a normal disease in normal circumstances, right? It's doing what it normally does, and maybe we're just paying a little more attention to it. Or is it a normal disease that's just doing something a little bit different? For some reason, it was able to cause more severe disease or spread more. So it might be something like a respiratory virus. It's always circulating out there, but maybe we had a big dog event, right? Lots of people and lots of dog parks getting together more than normal, and we had a lot more disease. So it's a regular thing. It's just been amplified based on things that we do. One of the big ones that we see is what I'd call a pseudo outbreak. We get this with respiratory disease a lot. We get reports of lots of kennel cough. Like I get emails every week or so. We're seeing a lot more coughing dogs here, or are you seeing more coughing dogs here? And most often it's just the regular background noise. And this is partly a Facebook effect. So what happens is we've always got dogs that are sick, and cats that are sick, and everything else. And there's that baseline level of disease that we often don't talk about much or hear about much. But sometimes a few cases get amplified on social media, right? So someone says, okay, my dog is sick and it was here. And someone says, oh yeah, my dog was coughing last week and it was there too. And then 4 or 5 other people join in. All of a sudden we've got fear. We've got an outbreak, which is really just that normal level of disease. So sometimes these outbreaks are just outbreaks of awareness and outbreaks of discussion, not really outbreaks of disease or not anything different than normal. You know, we can also have normal diseases that change somehow. They get different. They can cause more severe disease. Vaccines don't work well against them. Really rare. Or we've got a new disease completely. And that's obviously really, really rare. So most of the time we've got something happening, we want to think about our normal issues because it's normally our common problems that cause the issue. So a normal disease doing what it normally does, whether it's normal circumstances or something unique has allowed it to be a little bit different. But we really try to focus on the common things occurring commonly standpoint. And it's important for us because sometimes we can get too far down the pathway of being afraid and not doing the basic measures we can do to control a problem. So back to this situation in Michigan. So it was reported there were lots of dogs getting sick, lots of dogs dying, not really good numbers. And we didn't know how much was rumor and how much was actually, you know, sick and dead dogs. And then reports are, you know, it was acting like parvovirus, but they were negative on parvovirus testing. And indeed, the reports were they were negative on some of the initial tests. And, you know, that happens sometimes. Tests aren't 100%. We can see an issue with the disease and we can run the initial test, especially a screening test, which is, you know, a useful test, but not a guaranteed test. and it's negative, and sometimes we try to move on too quickly. So what this ended up being was a parvovirus outbreak. So a normal disease doing maybe a bit more than normal, or maybe just doing what it normally was with the right circumstances. And this is affecting dogs that were inadequately vaccinated. And I'll talk a little bit really briefly about some of the vaccine aspects here. But when we talk about inadequately vaccinated dogs, these are dogs that are really susceptible to parvo. It's a really contagious disease that can cause really severe disease. So if they're not vaccinated at all, if they were only vaccinated when they're very young, prior to the point where we're really confident in the vaccine working, or maybe they had crappy vaccine that, you know, is poor quality, maybe had issues with cold chain, wasn't kept cold all the way through until it made it to the dog, so the vaccine wasn't as good. So this was an outbreak of parvo, kind of acting like parvo. The initial test being negative threw people off and caused a lot more concern, but ultimately it's probably the same strain doing the same thing. There's some work being done on this to see if there's anything different about this strain, but my guess is it's going to be regular parvo doing regular parvo things. So from a vaccination standpoint, those of you who are taking in dogs, parvo obviously is a big concern in unvaccinated dogs. It can cause severe disease. It can spread really quickly in dogs that aren't immune. So what's our goal with parvo vaccination? Really, our goal is to get one dose, or at least one dose, into a dog when they can respond to a vaccine. And this is where we start thinking about how old dogs are when they get vaccinated. So what we do for our parvo with distemper is we vaccinate them starting young, because we're saying, okay, they're really young, they're really susceptible, let's vaccinate them. But we know that young puppies, young kittens don't necessarily respond to vaccines very well because they still have antibodies from their mom. And those antibodies will prevent a vaccine from working if there are enough of them. So they're protecting the puppy for a little while, and then they start to decline. So we hit them with a vaccine early, so maybe they'll respond to that. And if they do, great. And if they don't, well, hopefully they got some protection from mom. And then we'll repeat it. We'll say the same thing. Hopefully they respond. If not, well, we'll get them again. By the time we get to 16 weeks, we're getting pretty confident they're going to respond. And in a high-risk situation like a shelter, we take it a little bit longer, just so we're really confident they've responded. So we don't need to get lots and lots of vaccines into them. We need to vaccinate them at a point when they're going to respond to a vaccine. But in a shelter situation, that means we're going to give them a lot of vaccines until they get to that age. So those of you that are making vaccine decisions, you've probably seen the new AHA canine vaccination guidelines. Not a lot of major changes, and I'll just talk about the puppy parvo thing really quickly. Basically is what I said. So the recommendation is start vaccinating at 4 weeks of age, boost them every 2 to 3 weeks until 18 to 20 weeks. So a little bit beyond that 16-week window, because we're in a higher risk situation here. Older dogs, unless we know they've been vaccinated, we know they're protected, we want to vaccinate them. So a single dose, and they recommended a second dose just to make sure 2 or 3 weeks later. So it's still pretty straightforward, but something that we want to make sure we're doing right because of the implications of this disease. And this Michigan outbreak reminded us what happens when we've got dogs that don't get adequately vaccinated. But back to the Michigan thing, it really kind of reinforces some standard take-home messages for disease control. Again, common things occur commonly, right? Tests aren't infallible. Said that a few times. But from an infection control standpoint, it's important for us to remember you don't need to know to act. Right? We don't need to know exactly what's going on to take care of a problem, because what I would do for parvo is pretty similar to what I would do for lots of other known causes of disease like that, and probably for most of the unknown causes of disease like that. Because our control measures are pretty straightforward. I'm going to do things like identifying sick animals and isolating them, identifying exposed animals and isolating them, wearing proper PPE, keeping groups separate, good cleaning and disinfection, good communication. Sometimes we get paralyzed by fear or paralyzed by the unknown. Something weird's going on and I don't know what to do. And the big thing we can remember is, well, you do know what to do. Act like it's something normal. And on the worst side, right, one of the harder things to take care of our normal suspects. And we're probably taking care of the problem until we know exactly what happens, right? So don't let kind of fear or uncertainty lead to lack of a response. It should be a trigger to say, okay, let's just do things right. And we'll typically control these things. Okay, I'm happy to answer questions on this later. We don't have a ton of time, so I'm just going to go through a couple topics fairly quickly, and then we'll back up and answer questions on them all if there are any. Monkeypox. Monkeypox has been in the news a lot lately. Hopefully things are starting to come down a little bit now in people, but we still have some concerns about animals. So monkeypox is one of these really under-investigated diseases because it's been a disease in Africa and it really hasn't gotten that much attention because there's not as much money put into diseases that stay in Africa, quite honestly. So it's something we've known is there. It lives in animals. It's a zoonotic disease. We don't have a great handle on what animals it lives in normally, probably mainly rodents, squirrels, rats, and things like that. So it circulates in them, and occasionally in West Africa, spills people have contact with them. And rarely go per person. So this is really living in the animals and getting transmitted to people through direct contact periodically, sometimes causing pretty severe disease. But what's happened now is we have human-human monkeypox, as you know. So this started off again, human or animal to human, but now people are spreading it really effectively. So the monkeypox cases you're seeing in North America, we're seeing in Europe, these are human-human, all right? This is being spread by us, even though it started off in an animal. But that's to raise the question is, okay, this thing can live in animals, the reservoirs in animals. Can we send it back to animals? And is that going to be a problem for us? And we don't really know, but we know there is some potential concern here. Pictures on the right there, top row is a person, the bottom row is their dog. This is in Human Medical Journal. And this is the first documented case of monkeypox suspected to have gone from a person to a dog. Owners had monkeypox. Dog developed some skin lesions, and they identified monkeypox virus from them. There's been another report from Brazil with something similar. Not a lot of testing has been done on animals. We don't really know the scope of it. It's probably not like COVID, where infection rates of pets are pretty high, quite high. It's probably more rare, but it's tough to get surveillance done. We're doing it here, and we're just having a hard time getting animals enrolled. Just logistically, it's tough. So we don't really understand what the risk is. So we have to think about a few things, though. Now, the good thing about monkeypox is it does seem to be declining in people. So on the left here, this is Canada. Put some Canadian content in here. We're dropping down pretty nicely. On the right is the US, not dropping quite the same, but still dropping, I think, probably past the peak overall. Part of that due to really effective targeted vaccination in high-risk populations. So you've probably heard about this. This has predominantly been spread within the men that have sex with men community, the gay men community and bisexual men. Not because it's an STI, a sexually transmitted infection, it's just contact. So this virus is spread by direct contact predominantly. It's not spread by sex. Well, it can be spread by direct contact through sex, but still could ringworm. So it could a lot of other things. So it's not a sexually transmitted infection. It's just gotten into a population where it's spread. So it doesn't just spread through sex, or it doesn't spread through sex really at all per se. And it doesn't have to just be in that men that have sex with men population. It can infect anyone. It's just that demographic is the higher risk thing right now. So the take home is anyone can be susceptible if they're exposed to this virus. Fortunately, cases are going down, but there's still enough that we're seeing transmission. So when it comes to animals, we've got three main areas I guess we could be concerned about. One is disease in animals. Can obviously cause illness. We've seen it in that dog. We don't know the susceptible species. We don't know how severely ill they can get. We don't know whether it will be a mild skin lesion or whether they can get complications. In people, mortality rates probably about 1% or less right now. Historically in Africa, it's been higher than that. We've got potentially a milder strain in humans right now, or just we're picking up more cases. So a small percentage of people get seriously ill. There was a death in the US not too long ago, so it can cause serious disease, can cause infection in the brain. But typically it's a fairly nasty but resolving skin disease. So disease in animals is a concern. It's probably not one of our big concerns in the grand picture. Animals is a source of sporadic human infection. So this is where a person gets monkeypox and they infect their pet, but their pet then infects someone else. So we don't know, right? We're at the step where we know the odd animal can get infected, but they've got virus on skin lesions, so they can probably transmit it. There's probably some risk there, probably quite low overall, because your average animal that's been exposed probably isn't seeing a lot of other people. The one we're most concerned about really is this big picture One Health component is, could we have reservoirs? Like right now, we're assuming that if we get rid of some people in North America, it'll be gone. And it might come back in another animal or come back in with another person, but it's not going to keep circulating here because it lives in its natural reservoir in some rodents and squirrels in Africa, as far as we know. But what we don't want to have is it become an endemic normal organism here because it gets into our rat, mouse, squirrel, whatever population. And we don't have any evidence it's doing that, but COVID did, right? COVID got out there in deer. We've seen it in some other species. So we do have some concern that, we just want to make sure it doesn't bridge into the wildlife population. And that could be from direct human contact. The other prime source for getting this into the rodent population, probably cats. So if someone gets infected, they infect their cat goes outside, tangles with a squirrel, tangles with a rodent that survives. That's a potential entry point into the wild. So there are some things we need to be concerned about. We have no idea what the real risks are. We're really early in investigating this, but it's something we need to pay attention to. But if we bring it back to the, the animal owner, the animal shelter, the facility level concerns, well, we've got a few things we need to think about. What species are susceptible? We don't know. We're assuming rodents, squirrels, things like that might be the highest risk, but we just don't know. Probably dogs and cats aren't going to be true reservoirs. They're probably susceptible. They get infected, and like people, they get rid of it after a little bit of time, as opposed to a reservoir, which is a species where it can live for a long time. It circulates really effectively within that group, like it gets into the rat population. And we don't want to see this giving the rat population in New York City, for example, where it can just keep spreading around and then it's there forever. What's exposure? So if an animal is exposed, what does that really mean? Well, we're assuming it's going to be very similar to people. So if we've got an animal that's had close direct contact with an infected person, that's exposure. Time frame, 21 days is kind of the human limit for exposure, knowing that's stretching it pretty long. So realistically, probably a week or two in the past is our highest risk period if an animal's been exposed to a person with monkeypox. But we stretch that at 21 days to err on the side of caution. Duration of infectivity, as like I said before, we don't really know. So this dog, if it gets infected, probably does what it does in humans. It gets some skin lesions, eventually those lesions crust over and the virus is gone. Might take a couple of weeks, we don't really know. But there are concerns with some species, if they're reservoirs, they might be able to carry this for a long period of time. And this would be an issue, obviously, we got into a pet rodent. We'd have to see whether they continue to shed it for life for a long period of time. And that would obviously have some implications on how that animal is managed, or whether there's pressure to euthanize it. Route of transmission, direct contact, like monkeypox spread in people, touching a person, close direct contact, especially with skin lesions, is the biggest risk. Someone has scabs and they've got drainage from those, touching that is a prime risk. It can potentially be spread by aerosols and droplets, so a close contact air type of exposure. We don't really know how big of a risk it is. It probably isn't a very big risk. If you look at surveillance of healthcare workers, it's been, there's one study looking at 300 and some healthcare workers without really good respiratory precautions. There was no transmission. So we're really focused on that direct contact component, which is good. It's better than SARS. So this brings in some practical questions, and we're addressing this in veterinary clinics as well. So with COVID, what we started doing fairly quickly is asking people, okay, has your dog been in contact with anyone with COVID in the last 2 weeks? Like that. Do we do this with monkeypox? Probably not. It's a very rare disease overall at this point. It's still spreading in people. It's decreasing, but the number of people that are positive is really low. So it's a pretty low yield thing. And the other thing we're worried about is the stigma. People differentially asking that because they think the person might be a gay man. So treating different people differently for little benefit. But, we shouldn't necessarily be actively asking everyone if their animal's been exposed, but we need to know if they say. So if someone comes in and saying, okay, I've got an animal, I've got monkeypox, and, I need to take my animal to a clinic. It needs to go to a shelter. I need to go to a hospital. Someone has to take care of it. It's getting surrendered for whatever reason, right? So we have to know how to act in those scenarios. And ideally, we figure that out in advance, because trying to do this on the fly never works out well. But like I said before, like what we do in infection control is the same stuff, really just with little subtle differences, right? It's the same general concepts. It's really a lot of the same activities. So personal protective equipment, right? This is spread predominantly by direct contact. So we wear barriers, we wear gloves, we wear gowns if we have an infected animal, and probably have an exposed animal, be on the safe side. We can isolate exposed animals, infected animals. We can use hand sanitizers. We can use just our routine disinfectants. They work well if they're used right. We can think about respiratory precautions, pretty low yield probably. When I'm sampling animals that are exposed, I wear kind of the whole hog. I wear respiratory precautions and eye protection because we just don't know. And I'm in close contact with their face, sticking a swab in their mouth. And I've got an owner that may have active monkeypox infection, sometimes holding the animal. So that's a fairly unique situation. For normal situations, do we use respiratory precautions? It's hard to say. It doesn't hurt though. And I think we're all getting used to wearing masks. So wearing a mask plus or minus eye protection isn't a bad thing. Now, for a little bit of guidance, we got a couple of things that are out there. CDC has some information for veterinarians on handling animals with suspected monkeypox, and that basically just for anyone handling animals with monkeypox in a facility type situation. We have some Canadian guidance that's going to get released, hopefully get released anytime now. It's going to be coming out through the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association and through our Worms and Germs blog. It was just getting some final formatting done. So I'm hoping it'll be coming out today, tomorrow, very soon. So it's a little more detailed than the CDC stuff. It does really apply to any type of facility where you have different animals, potentially someone that's been exposed. So there is some information out there. Hopefully you won't see one, but we want to have this in advance so people aren't kind of panicking if they run into that situation. If you're interested in this area a little bit more, so CoverNet is a Canadian group. It's based on COVID, not surprisingly by the name, but it's expanded into some emerging disease things. So we have what we call a living evidence profile underway. So this is a continuous updating of review of the literature about what we know about monkeypox in animals. And it's publicly available. The link is there. I can put it in the chat probably at the end, but if you just Google CoverNet and monkeypox, it'll come up. So if you're interested in that, it gets refreshed every 2 weeks. And anything new that we find in the literature gets added into that with some kind of discussion around it. Okay, I think we'll have time to do probably one more here. And let's talk about avian flu, because what we've been seeing with avian flu this year in North America is truly unprecedented. Now, we always pay attention to it. We see periodic incursions of avian flu in North America, and sometimes it causes some fairly, dramatic problems, but fairly short-term problems. And that can be in poultry, that can be in wild birds, it can be in shelters. When there was an outbreak a few years ago of an H7N2 avian flu that caused a lot of disease in a New York shelter, including an infection of a veterinarian. So it's something that we've always been on the lookout for, always been aware of. But what's happened in the last year has blown everything we know out of the water. And this has been a sustained and really widespread North America-wide outbreak of H5N1, highly pathogenic avian flu. So the highly pathogenic means severity, basically. So but the highly pathogenic basically means what it does in poultry. So this is the type of flu virus that can cause serious disease in poultry. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll do the same thing in mammals. It's how it acts in birds, but that's the nomenclature you'll see. So what we've had is this virus has come in and it's spreading around really effectively. And it's spreading around in kind of some predictable patterns. There's a map here. You can see the red dots are commercial poultry. The green dots are wild birds. The yellow ones are non-commercial poultry, backyard poultry, where we're seeing a lot of this. Backyard chickens have disproportionately been affected by this virus. And then you see some blue diamonds in there. These are mammals, because we are seeing spillover into wild mammals and very rare spillover into people, and very rare meaning couple. So fortunately for people, this virus hasn't caused much of a problem yet, but it is wreaking havoc in the wild bird populations. Each of these dots represents maybe one bird, but often a lot of birds. And in some areas, thousands of birds. We're seeing some massive die-offs in some areas of Canada with water birds. We're seeing some pretty high mortality rates in raptor populations. I've seen a disproportionate number of eagles around here, but eagles, any of the other raptors. So some species that are already at risk are getting hit pretty heavily by this virus. So this is the thing, the spring was really bad for this virus. Things calmed down in the summer, and our warning was, yeah, but what's going to happen in the fall? And the reason for that was migration. So in my area, so I'm in the Great Lakes area. I'm not sure if you can see my arrow here, but I'm kind of, you got Detroit, you got Buffalo. If you want some US landmarks, I'm kind of between those on the Canadian side of the border. So we saw a big spring influx, and that was because of migratory birds spreading it up predictably through the different flyways that are coming from the south up into Canada. And what goes up comes down, and that applies to migrating birds too. So what's happening now is they're all turning around and flying back to you guys. And the birds that have avian flu, because they've been mixing around in these large populations, they're going to keep bringing it back. So we've been expecting to see another blip or big jump in avian flu starting right around now, and we're starting to see it. We're seeing more transmission in wild birds at the moment and into commercial and pet poultry. So you're going to see another influx of avian flu probably in a lot of areas over the next month or so. So if we look at some US data here, just to put in perspective what your risk is in your area, we got wild birds on the left and we have poultry on the right. There's a lot of surveillance bias, right? People are looking more at wild birds, you find more, because you've got to actually go looking for them. If you're not doing a wild bird surveillance, you won't get it. But you can see wild birds have been found, pretty widely across a lot part of the US. Put that in the numbers, wild birds, but this is as of a couple days ago, about 2,500 wild birds. This is detected, right? So for a bird to make it on this list, they've got to get infected and they've got to get really sick or die, and they've got to get tested. Most birds that are in the wild that get sick and die don't get looked at by a person. So obviously this is a massive underestimate of the number of birds that are affected. Poultry, 45 million, obviously it's a pretty big number. Reported human cases in the US, 1, which is good. There was 1 in Europe as well. These are close contact with infected birds. The virus doesn't seem to really like people, which is good because some H5N1 strains cause really serious disease in people. They don't tend to transmit very well in people, but they can cause really serious disease. So this is a good one from that standpoint. The problem is it's recombining, it's mixing and matching. And what we're most worried about right now is we're going to get a fall influx of cases from migration and everything else. At the same time, we're hitting human flu season. And this human flu season is shaping up not to be a very good one. And what we don't want to see is mixing of a human flu with this virus and creating a new flu virus. So if you get someone, a person or an animal, that's infected with both of these, then you can come out at the end of that with a new flu virus. And what we don't want is one that can transmit like a human flu virus, but cause serious disease and be different, that our immune system doesn't respond to it very well because it's a new virus to us. So we are still concerned about this from a human standpoint and from a wild animal standpoint. So a lot of foxes have been affected. This is in North America and Europe, but it's been a wide range of species. There have been a lot of mammals that have been impacted. That includes some strange things like dolphins, porpoises, that's been in North America and in Europe. I think there was a beluga in Canada. So a pretty wide range of species. And again, a massive underestimate because an animal's got to get infected and then somehow encounter a person and get tested to make it onto this list. So usually these are pretty severely ill animals. Often they're neurologic. The foxes usually have neurologic disease when they're identified and tested. So there's probably a lot more circulation going on in the background that we know about. So it's an avian flu virus, but it's got a pretty good ability to infect lots of different species. So I guess I said this human risk is low right now, but there's always a but when it comes to flu. When it comes to populations and shelters, well, highest risk situations are bringing in sick poultry, backyard chickens. Like I said, backyard chickens are a greater risk because they're outside, they're exposed to birds. Most of our commercial poultry operations have really tight biosecurity. They're inside, they still get infected, but the backyard poultry are much more likely to get exposed. So if you're seeing sick poultry coming in from a backyard operation or stray, sometimes we see stray poultry that are sick, that's obviously a big concern. Other sick birds, especially with neurologic disease, that's a huge kind of big red flag that influenza might be the issue. Healthy birds can carry the virus though too. They might be incubating it, they might be mildly sick, they might be recovering, but still shed the virus. So any bird really is some degree of risk, but our sick poultry are going to be at a higher risk, and that includes ducks and sick poultry. So we need to think about a few things. So we've got risk of bringing animals in if you're bringing birds in. If you're bringing in wild mammals, some degree of risk, mainly with neurologic cases probably. So we've got a couple of different things to be concerned about though. One is just the impact on the animals. The other is the indirect impact on the animals, meaning if you get a positive result in a group, does that mean they're going to come in and want to euthanize all the susceptible species, probably all the birds? And that's been a challenge we've dealt with, where you've got rescues where you get some positive birds and then they go in and euthanize all the birds, including birds that may not have been exposed. We're getting hopefully a little more nuanced response up here, but it is variable in how that's addressed. So what we don't want to do is have a positive bird come into the shelter, and if you have other birds in there, requirement to euthanize all birds because there's been a positive one in a facility. And we do have some concern about spread to other mammals and spread to people, but birds still are the big issue. So if you are taking in birds, what we want to do is identify these before they get into the building. So if you're bringing in poultry, if we screen them before they hit the building, okay, they come in and they're sick, right? Something's just not right about them. Well, maybe we can keep them outside. Maybe we can move them somewhere else. We can isolate them. So if they do become positive, you can say, okay, they were never in the building. You don't need to worry about other birds in the building, especially if you have a lot of other birds in the building, and the implications of that from a transmission standpoint or a regulatory euthanasia standpoint. We want to keep those separate. So triage them outside, look for non-specific disease, respiratory disease, neuro disease, and keep them away. Also just need to think about, again, it's our routine things, right? Isolating new admissions because they may be carrying lots of things. This is just a really good example of why we want to do that. The more you can convince someone that, okay, I isolated them really well, here's what we do, there wasn't much risk of exposure of anyone else, the less likely they're going to want to do something fairly drastic. Obviously, isolation testing of birds with potential avian influenza based on their clinical signs. And again, just good routine infection control. I think I'll probably leave it there because I think we're getting close to the end of the time. If there are any questions on that, I'm happy to close these off and jump back to questions. And Julie, if you want to jump in too, obviously.
Yeah, Scott, that was really a great roundup of what happens and the reminder that about the horses and the zebras. They teach us that in veterinary school, but I think it's always good to remember that common things happen commonly. And so when there's a parvo-like outbreak somewhere, it's most likely parvo. Until proven otherwise. But your point that you don't need to know what it is before you take action. You can collect samples and then start your biosecurity. There were several comments in the chat about feline panleukopenia outbreaks and what might be going on with those. And I just wanted to comment briefly, it is the same. So your shelter vaccination protocols for cats are almost identical to dogs. It's really important that they get that FVRCP early and frequently if they are staying in the high risk environment. Most outbreaks of panleukopenia that we see can be traced back to incomplete vaccination histories, often in shelters. The wrong disinfectant. It is very important to use something like accelerated peroxide, Wissy wash, bleach. The other disinfectants do not work, even if they have parvo in the name. So parvicide, parvosol, those are not the right ones to use. So make sure all of your dog and cat areas have a disinfectant that kills the parvoviruses. And then I wanted to make a brief comment about TNR, because we have heard a few cases where TNR programs are not vaccinating with FVRCP at the time of neutering. And it turns out that the clinic itself was the source of cross-contamination between the cats. So some cats came in that were shedding, they were probably asymptomatic. It's very persistent in the environment. People spread it on their hands to other cats, and because they don't have a vaccination program, they ended up with outbreaks when cats went back to their colonies. And what this always looks like is poisoning, because the whole colony has sudden death and it gets investigated as poisoning, and then it's recognized as a panleuk outbreak in a program that did not vaccinate against with an FVRCP. So my plea today is, if you're doing TNRs, add that one vaccine. It's one of the best vaccines that we have as far as the panleuk part. Works pretty quickly. One dose in an adult cat will provide protection pretty quickly.
Yeah, can I jump in that really quickly? Something I was actually going to say is, don't worry if they're a little bit sick or if they're getting anesthetized or anything else. If you got the cat, vaccinate it. Right? They're labeled for healthy cats. That's because they're tested on healthy cats. Who do we really focus vaccination for? Flu and COVID and people? Sick people, right? Because they're more likely to get problems. So don't wait for that perfect scenario. Get it when you got the cat.
Yeah, at or before the time of intake. Even hours matter. All right, questions for us?
Well, I'm so sorry. I know we promised our group today that there would be time for questions. We can always, and you did actually answer some of the ones that I saw in the chat regarding Parvo and panleuk. So thank you, Dr. Levy. And we are happy to feed any questions that were not answered in Maddie's Pet Forum. So please check that out for any follow-up questions and responses from our great speaker today, Dr. Weese, Dr. Levy. Thank you so much for contributing to our understanding of zoonotic and emerging infectious diseases. And thank you to Bobby being a great co-host. Mary, as always, we love to hear from you. And I just wanted to wish everybody a great week.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.